It's Wednesday and it's time for Right of Centre with Bridget Morton. Bridget, this week you're looking at the OAA.
Yeah, it's come up as a bit of a topic of discussion. Dr. Sharma, the now expelled former Labor MP, part of his allegations was around coaching of the Official Information Act and some screenshots about some ministers and, some instructions about how to avoid the OAA.
And what have you discovered? And I noticed the Prime Minister was questioned this week about the OAA.
Yeah, I mean, in my column, I really touch on the fact that I've spent a lot of time with the Official Information Act, almost from a brief perspective, doing it as in Australia in opposition to their Freedom of Information Act, which works very similar to ours, then in a minister's office in the beehive, having to deal with a large volume, and now on behalf of clients as an advocate. And then it really gives you, I think, a sense of really what's happening with the Official Information Act, but also how important it is as well. So really, I want to sort of touch on the fact that there's a lot of calls for, the changes to be made to the actual law itself, big investigations to happen of what the Prime Minister's office is doing. But ultimately, the only way that you're really going to get in change is if, from the top, and I really mean the Prime Minister here, makes that cultural change that there is, it is a priority to get information out to the public in a timely manner.
What did the Prime Minister say this week?
So in question time, she was asked by the opposition about the Official Information Act and some of these allegations that Dr. Sharma raised. And for her, she really fell back on some of these old sort of tropes about, they say that 97% of official information requests are answered on time, which sounds great. Sounds like there's not really a problem. Except the Act allows you to extend beyond the original 20 working days almost as many times as you'd like. You just have to have sort of, use some of the reasons about consultation or volume or anything like that. And so you see some departments, particularly police is one that comes up a lot, having, they may not answer a request for 200 plus days or until the Ombudsman gets involved.
Well, is the OAA process being respected then?
I would say possibly not. I think there's always a spectrum across, every government, be it across ministers and across government departments about how they treat the Official Information Act. I would say Peter Hughes, who's the Public Service Commissioner, he has a big focus on official information getting out there. So he really pushes that. But if a minister doesn't want information going out, it can be really hard for officials and advisors to get that information out.
What is and isn't OAable? You talk about constructive advice being given verbally.
Yeah, so there's a number of exceptions under the Official Information Act. There's the sort of straightforward ones that you'd expect, national security, for instance. But there's also a category where they can withhold information on the basis of free and frank advice. So this is sort of a core value at the centre of our public service that they need to give. It's part of their duties to give free and frank advice to ministers, to tell them when their policies don't make sense, they don't add up, they're wrong, etc. That's what we rely on the public service to do for us. So there's some protection around keeping that confidential so that they can make those, have those discussions and give that feedback without fear of sort of refute. The problem is that it's quite a grey area about what is free and frank versus information that should be known. The Ombudsman's put out a number of practice notes about it, but you still find that there's a lot of departments applying it differently and a lot of ministers applying it differently.
Well, should reporters be waiting, 3-6 months for their OAAs to come back?
No, absolutely not. And that's the whole point of the Official Information Act, is the timeliness is a key part of that information, because that, if you're reporting on a story today, the most important part of that story is getting more information out within the coming days while it's still in the news. Trying to stand up a story on the back of, something that might be important, but not that, story worthy on itself 6 months later when you finally get the information, it's not going to get out there. You're not going to have that accountability and transparency that is needed. Also, if for people that are not reporters, so people who want the information for, say, like my clients who need it for advocacy, putting in submissions, trying to understand what's happening at a government level, for them, often the submission process is closed, or their ability to advocate, the time has gone past by the time they get the information that would have helped their case. And that seems quite unjust.
Bridget Morton, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Jono.